During aerobic endurance events that extend beyond 45 minutes, intermittent sports, or situations where athletes have multiple events within a day, nutrition becomes a crucial component of maintaining optimal performance. Proper intake of fluids, carbohydrates, and in some cases amino acids can significantly influence energy levels, minimize muscle damage, and help the body meet the high demands of prolonged physical exertion. Hydration is fundamental for both sustaining performance and mitigating risks like overheating, dehydration, and heat-related illnesses. Athletes are advised to begin hydrating several hours prior to exercise. This early intake allows sufficient time for fluid absorption and the elimination of any excess through urine, which reduces the likelihood of feeling overhydrated when competition begins. During the event itself, it is essential for athletes to continue consuming fluids to prevent their body weight from decreasing by more than 2% due to water loss, as this level of dehydration can detrimentally impact physical performance and mental focus. The optimal composition of a sports drink for during event hydration includes 20 to 30 milliequivalents of sodium, 460 to 690 milligrams with chloride as the anion per liter, 2 to 5 milliequivalents of potassium, 78 to 195 milligrams per liter, and carbohydrates at a concentration between 5% and 10%. Consuming a sports drink with a carbohydrate concentration above 8% can slow gastric emptying, the rate at which the stomach empties, which may lead to gastrointestinal discomfort. To avoid such issues, a carbohydrate concentration of around 6% to 8% is often considered ideal for these beverages. Fluid guidelines vary by age. The American Academy of Pediatrics has provided specific recommendations for younger athletes. For example, children weighing 40 kilograms, 88 pounds, should consume 5 ounces, 148 milliliters of cold water or a flavored salted beverage every 20 minutes during physical activity, while adolescents weighing 60 kilograms, 132 pounds, should drink 9 ounces, 256 milliliters every 20 minutes, regardless of thirst. They also suggest a sodium chloride concentration of 15 to 20 millimoles per liter, equivalent to 1 gram per 2 pints of fluid. Research shows that this concentration increases voluntary fluid intake by up to 90% when compared to unflavored water, which may be beneficial in encouraging young athletes to drink enough fluids. It is worth noting that 9 ounces of fluid at one time can be a substantial amount for an adolescent and may result in stomach discomfort. Consequently, these guidelines should be adjusted based on individual needs, ensuring that each athlete remains comfortable and performs at their best during competition. During aerobic endurance events lasting over 45 minutes, maintaining a steady intake of carbohydrates is essential to improve performance, reduce exercise-induced stress, and support immune system function. Though sports drinks provide carbohydrates, they typically fall short of matching the carbohydrate demands of prolonged intense activities. For athletes training at high intensities, calorie expenditure can range from 600 to 1,200 calories per hour. Research suggests that consuming between 28 to 144 grams of carbohydrates per hour with higher intakes studied during cycling can decrease reliance on glycogen stores, delay exhaustion, and improve performance by supplying a consistent source of energy. While greater carbohydrate intake per hour can be beneficial, the body has a limit to how much externally supplied carbohydrate it can process, often maxing out at around 1.0 to 1.1 grams per minute. This limitation is likely due to the absorption rate of glucose and its delivery rate into the bloodstream. Carbohydrates vary in their oxidation rates. Glucose, sucrose, maltose, maltodextrins, and amylopectin are rapidly oxidized, while fructose, galactose, and amylose are metabolized 25% to 50% slower. Each carbohydrate type uses a unique intestinal transporter, so consuming a single type, such as fructose alone, can lead to limited absorption once that specific transporter reaches saturation. However, by combining different types of carbohydrates like sucrose, fructose, and glucose or maltodextrin, athletes can increase the absorption rate and exogenous carbohydrate oxidation, leading to improved carbohydrate utilization. Studies also show that athletes who consume glucose in combination with fructose perform better in time trial simulations than those who consume glucose alone. For example, when glucose was combined with fructose at rate of 1.8 grams per minute, 108 grams per hour, cyclists achieved better results in a time trial performance after 120 minutes of cycling, a simulation of the demanding final stages of a race. Additionally, cyclists given both glucose and fructose every 15 minutes outperformed those given only glucose. Interestingly, athletes can also experience a performance boost from merely rinsing a carbohydrate solution in their mouth without swallowing it. This action appears to stimulate the central nervous system, enhancing performance in activities lasting around 1 hour by roughly 2% to 3%. Including protein alongside carbohydrates may further support endurance athletes. Studies show that adding protein to carbohydrate gels can increase time to exhaustion during activities like cycling, potentially due to the protein itself or the additional calories provided by the protein. However, results are mixed. Only studies measuring time to exhaustion demonstrated significant improvement, and it remains uncertain whether the benefit arises from the protein or the extra calories. For athletes engaged in intermittent high-intensity sports such as soccer, basketball, tennis, and football, the demand for both carbohydrates and fluids is substantial. These sports involve repeated bouts of short, intense activity and require a wide range of skills, making sustained performance challenging. In prolonged activities, carbohydrate supplementation supports performance and can help preserve the quality of technical skills, such as precision and reaction time. For example, tennis players who cannot continuously hydrate during play may lose over 2.5 liters of fluid per hour, and experts recommend a fluid intake of about 200 to 400 milliliters per changeover to maintain hydration levels. Soccer players also benefit from carbohydrate electrolyte drinks. One study showed that professional soccer players who drank a carbohydrate electrolyte solution performed better on dribble tests with higher precision ratings than those who received a placebo. However, not all studies report identical findings. Some have shown no measurable effects on skills such as tackling, heading, or shooting. For example, in a trial involving a group of 17 male soccer players, those given a carbohydrate electrolyte beverage every 15 minutes during a 90-minute shuttle test experienced less skill degradation and a smaller reduction in skill performance compared to those given a placebo. In another study designed to simulate a soccer or basketball game, players who consumed a carbohydrate electrolyte drink before exercise and during halftime were able to run 37% longer during a final fatigue test and perform better in a 20-meter sprint and a whole body motor skill test in the later stages of the exercise. They also reported feeling less fatigued. And this suggests that consuming a carbohydrate electrolyte beverage during high-intensity intermittent sports supports endurance, enhances performance, and helps sustain skill execution as the game progresses. Carbohydrates are a key energy source during resistance training, making them essential for athletes in strength and power sports. Research reveals that significant muscle glycogen is depleted during various weightlifting exercises, even when only a few sets are performed. This depletion is particularly relevant for athletes who rely heavily on muscle strength and power, such as hammer throwers or offensive linemen in American football, as they may experience a drop in glycogen levels. And starting exercise with low carbohydrate stores increases the likelihood of muscle breakdown, whereas maintaining these glycogen stores can help reduce muscular fatigue, particularly in slow twitch muscle fibers, and potentially boost performance. The post-competition meal serves to rehydrate the athlete, replenish glycogen, and repair muscle tissue. This meal plays a crucial role in preparing the body for the next bout of activity. While individual needs vary based on factors like sport, intensity, playtime, weight, age, and possibly sex, most research on post-competition nutrition has focused on male athletes, limiting specific recommendations for females. Generally, replacing fluids and electrolytes is essential after competition. Consuming meals and snacks that include sodium along with water can restore these levels. Athletes with significant sodium losses may benefit from salting their foods or consuming a carbohydrate electrolyte sports drink. For athletes in weight class sports, rehydration strategies are particularly critical due to the potential health risks and performance challenges associated with starting competition in a dehydrated state. After long aerobic endurance events, it's vital to restore carbohydrate levels before the next training session or competition. Glycogen synthesis, the process of replenishing these stores, occurs in two stages. An initial rapid phase that is independent of insulin and lasts 30 to 60 minutes, and a slower phase lasting several hours. Consuming 1.0 to 1.85 grams of carbohydrates per kilogram of body weight per hour immediately after exercise and at regular intervals for up to 5 hours can speed up glycogen replenishment. However, strenuous endurance events like marathons can cause muscle damage, potentially delaying glycogen synthesis despite a high carbohydrate intake. Athletes with over 24 hours to recover can afford to wait before eating, replenishing glycogen over time. However, those with less than 24 hours should consider consuming high carbohydrate meals immediately after finishing an event and regularly afterward. Since aerobic endurance exercise leads to muscle breakdown, adding protein to the post-event meal can promote muscle repair and potentially reduce soreness. Protein can also enhance glycogen storage when carbohydrate intake is low, under 1.2 grams of carbohydrate per kilogram of body weight per hour. This was demonstrated in a study where elite athletes consuming protein before and after training showed reduced muscle breakdown and improved performance, while a group consuming carbohydrates only did not. Other research supports the importance of post-exercise protein in aiding muscle protein synthesis, although the ideal amount and timing depend on the specific context, such as whether the exercise was done in a fasted or fed state. Athletes in high-intensity sports like soccer or basketball often need immediate recovery between games in tournaments. These sports can significantly deplete muscle glycogen, so restoring these levels is crucial to delay fatigue and support performance in subsequent games. For instance, studies show that a high carbohydrate diet improves performance in sports that require repeated high-intensity effort, such as soccer, where glycogen restoration leads to better endurance in intermittent shuttle runs and other game-like activities. Protein post-exercise also aids in reducing markers of muscle damage, although the optimal amount remains unclear. Adding protein does not enhance performance in a subsequent exercise bout within a 4-hour recovery window, but it can support recovery by decreasing muscle breakdown. Athletes in strength and power sports depend on blood glucose and glycogen for energy. Resistance training can deplete glycogen significantly, leading to reduced force production and muscle weakness. Therefore, consuming high glycemic carbohydrates immediately after exercise is recommended for athletes needing to compete or train again within 24 hours. The amount of carbohydrate required to fully replenish glycogen depends on factors such as intensity and duration of the activity, body weight, muscle mass, pre-competition glycogen stores, and carbohydrate intake during competition. Research shows that consuming 1.5 grams of carbohydrate per kilogram of body weight immediately and 1 hour after resistance training restores glycogen levels almost fully within 6 hours. Carbohydrates also play a role in reducing muscle protein breakdown, which is essential for maintaining net protein balance alongside muscle protein synthesis. While carbohydrates do not directly stimulate muscle protein synthesis, they help curb acute protein breakdown, especially after resistance exercise. Small carbohydrate intakes between 30 and 100 grams can effectively reduce protein breakdown, although the degree of benefit depends on the resistance stimulus and the athlete's nutritional status. Supplementing with protein post-resistance training enhances muscle protein synthesis, which supports muscle growth. A dose of 20 to 25 grams of high-quality, high leucine protein effectively stimulates muscle protein synthesis in younger athletes, while older adults may require around 40 grams. Studies indicate that leucine content and its rate of delivery are important factors for maximizing muscle protein synthesis. Consistent post-training protein supplementation can lead to small to moderate gains in muscle hypertrophy over time, though the exact relationship between acute muscle protein synthesis increases and long-term hypertrophy remains complex. The concept of exercise interference suggests that combining endurance exercise with strength training, especially in back-to-back sessions, may reduce strength gains compared to strength training alone, while still enhancing endurance performance. This phenomenon has driven interest in concurrent training research, though nutrition recommendations are often drawn from studies that examine endurance or resistance training separately. Carbohydrate intake after endurance exercise and before strength training can help prevent muscle breakdown, and consuming protein after endurance exercise or during lifting sessions supports muscle protein synthesis, especially for prolonged training sessions over 2 hours. For adults, post-exercise protein consumption isn't the only factor to consider. Protein intake at each main meal is also important. Resistance training increases muscle sensitivity to amino acids for up to 48 hours, whereas the anabolic effect of a meal lasts around 3 to 5 hours. For optimal muscle remodeling, experts recommend consuming 20 to 30 grams of protein at each meal, spaced every 3 to 4 hours. hours. While protein synthesis research in children is limited due to invasive measurement procedures, it is generally understood that children do not need to follow adult protein intake guidelines since protein synthesis in children is regulated more by insulin and overall calorie intake rather than by leucine levels. Different sports have varied protein requirements based on their specific demands. For example, athletes in low to moderate endurance activities like jogging or triathlons typically require 1 gram of protein per kilogram of body weight daily. Elite endurance athletes, however, may need more than 1.6 grams per kilogram to support their intense training. Sports with high physical contact or resistance demands like American football or weightlifting generally require even higher intakes ranging from 1 to 2 grams per kilogram. These guidelines vary slightly as not all sports have specific research-based recommendations. Aerobic athletes benefit from a high intake of carbohydrates and protein, particularly if training lasts 90 minutes or more. Consuming carbohydrates during exercise, 28 to 144 grams per hour of various sugars like sucrose, fructose, glucose, or maltodextrin helps delay exhaustion. After exercise, athletes should replenish glycogen stores with around 1.5 grams of carbohydrates per kilogram within 30 minutes and include at least 10 grams of protein within 3 hours. Strength and speed athletes, like those in power sports, should supplement with carbohydrates to preserve glycogen levels and prevent muscle breakdown. Daily protein requirements range from 1.4 to 1.7 grams per kilogram, with 20 to 25 grams of high leucine protein recommended for younger athletes after training, while older adults may need 40 grams for optimal muscle protein synthesis. Carbohydrate consumption, 30 to 100 grams of high glycemic carbohydrates after intense workouts can reduce protein breakdown. For muscle growth, athletes should consume high glycemic carbohydrates, 30 to 100 grams, after muscle damaging workouts to lower muscle protein breakdown. Younger adults should aim for 20 to 25 grams of high leucine protein immediately after resistance training, while older athletes may need more. Consuming 20 to 30 grams of protein every 3 to 4 hours throughout the day supports continuous muscle protein synthesis. Athletes focused on muscular endurance, such as those in prolonged activities, need to maintain hydration to prevent weight loss of more than 2% of body weight. Carbohydrate electrolyte beverages are helpful during long training or competition to delay fatigue, especially if starting the activity after an overnight fast. Replacing glycogen stores before the next session and consuming post-exercise protein supports recovery and minimizes muscle soreness. These nutrition strategies address specific needs for concurrent training and different performance goals, offering a foundation for tailored plans based on the unique demands of each sport and training regimen.